The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. Want the real story behind the sound bites and headlines? Let's find the facts. Remember, it's not a conspiracy theory if it's the truth. You are not paranoid or confused. You just need to know.
Hey everybody, Keefer with you. Another edition of Need to Know is on the air, and we're glad you're with us. Appreciate all of you who support the program and listen during each week. We give you the show on Mondays, and usually it's up by Tuesday, so look for Need to Know every week right here on TKR. Next Monday, of course, we will be coming to you again, but it will be a holiday situation because Memorial Day 2026 celebrated next Monday on the 25th of May, and it might sneak up on some folks because traditionally Memorial Day is the last Monday of each May month schedule, and this time, with the calendar falling it the way it does, the last day of May is the 31st, which is on a Sunday. So this is coming up next week, the final Monday of the month of May. So that needs to be noted a little bit earlier. So if you were kind of thinking it's for the end of the month, it's not quite this time, a little bit earlier, just the way the days fall into place. I got to start off by telling you that I had a big disappointment today in preparing for this show. I went back in my archives where I had the classic program that I recorded back in 2016 with my partner Terre Quillian on our local show here on WZRR 99.5 Real Talk Radio in Birmingham. We had an afternoon program called The Ride Home, and it was a highly successful show. We really enjoyed doing it. Terre Quillian is the most beautiful, brilliant, talented person I've ever known, and being her partner in broadcasting ventures for 11 years, one of the great thrills of my life. It was just fantastic every time to sit down, collaborate, but then the magic really came just when the lights came on and the on-air sign lit up and the microphones were activated, because it was just one of those experiences where while you're doing it, you hope it lasts forever, because there's just nobody that compares. She is just the very best. And our first this is the first couple of months that we actually did the ride home. We did a sports show the year before called The Morning After, which is still on the air on Sunday mornings in Birmingham on Jocks 94.5. But the ride home was a weekday show, Monday through Friday, but on holidays, so that the whole staff could have days off on Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, etc. We used to record these kind of special shows to run. You don't want dead air on your radio station. So Terry and I pretty much just impromptu showed up a couple days before that Memorial Day and put together a show that I've really historically run every single year on various platforms I have. It was our Memorial Day show from 2016. And it was just so perfectly captured the essence. Again, we didn't really rehearse. I had a few themes in mind, but we just kind of winged it that day. And the result was amazing. We always got tremendous compliments as we've played it over the years. And looking back now, that's almost 10 years ago we recorded that. But for the last 7 or 8 years, I've had it posted on Facebook or Twitter or wherever, and people have really responded to it. I went to find it today, and I was absolutely horrified to realize that the website I had it attached to came up when I put in the information. I've got a new website now. By the way, it's KipKeeferSports.com. Check it out. Lots of good information on there and some good archive programs. But the previous website I had, KipIsTheKey.com, it came up site expired. Now, I don't know what that means exactly, but maybe we just didn't pay the bill this month because that website has been up for a number of years. My son, who handles most of my technical pursuits, is traveling right now in Japan for another week. He's been gone all last week and then all this week. So I couldn't put him on the case to find out if my previous website is salvageable. I sure hope so, because I don't want to lose that recording. It's one of my favorite professional pieces that we've ever done. Anyway, so I don't have that for you today, which I normally would have put up in this Need to Know spot. So what I'm going to try to do, absent that and absent Terry, I'm going to just try to give you some of the basic highlights from that show as I recall them. I think we had some great information in there, some things I'm sure that a lot of you are not aware of. And for those of you who have never heard the broadcast, hopefully I can recreate it to some semblance of similarity here today on Need to Know. Memorial Day, of course, is something, and I had a conversation with a person not that long ago that really, and we've been talking about this, I mentioned it last week on the show right here, that right now it's estimated that 60% of Americans that were raised in this country, American-born, if you gave them the citizenship test that is officially required of anybody who immigrates into this country properly, goes through the legal process, and that's what immigration is, a legal process. If they take the citizenship test, they have to pass it in order to be eligible for citizenship. It's just like your driver's test. But it's estimated that right now, with the schools and the education system getting so far away, drifting so far left, that they don't want to emphasize American history. They don't teach civics. They don't teach American government. They don't focus on any aspect of the amazing origins of this country. And right now it's estimated 60% of Americans would fail the citizenship test, which is absolutely appalling. This person I was talking to about a week ago, I mentioned, we can't do it that week because Monday is a holiday. And he looked at me and said, what holiday? I said, it's Memorial Day. He said, oh, yeah. Wait a minute, I thought that was in September. I said, no, that's Labor Day in September. He said, oh, okay, the Monday holidays, I get confused. Terry points out in our broadcast for Memorial Day that she had spent a lot of time in England in years leading up to that period. And once again, we're talking about 2016. And she said, that sounds familiar. I didn't tell that particular story, but we got on the Memorial Day theme of how people still are a little bit confused as to exactly what it is for. She said in England, they've completely gotten away from any kind of official names of holidays or themes or specific celebrations, and they just call them bank holidays. Well, that just means the banks aren't open, but nothing in particular. It's just a day off. In our country, we really need to get back to the traditions of what our holidays stand for. I don't want Memorial Day to be a bank holiday. I don't want people to be confused. When we have Memorial Day, and then later in November, we have Veterans Day. Terry and I said on that broadcast 10 years ago, every day should be Veterans Day. If you are aware of somebody who gave a lot of their time and effort and dedication to keeping our country free by serving in our military or doing anything along those lines, in our federal government that was for the safety and security of all of us here in the country. We should be thanking veterans every day of the year, 365 days. But people who get confused between Veterans Day and Memorial Day really need to get a clue, because Memorial Day is the day devoted to those soldiers that did not get to come home from battle or lost their lives, however, in whatever variety serving their country happened. Plane crashes, transport mishaps, of course, direct action, and the numbers are astounding if you go back through history. And Memorial Day is the day for those that gave their last full measure of devotion, who sacrificed themselves so you and me and the people that created us here and their parents and our future people that are in our lives, our children and their future children and grandchildren, all of these American heroes who gave their life for this country to keep it free and strong and really defeat tyranny in all kinds of places around the world. They are recognized on this Memorial Day. And basically the tradition is kind of strange, because it really started with the war between the states, the Civil War. Now, in that original broadcast, I said the Civil War, and that was the war between the states. Nothing civil about it, which was one of the first kind of lighthearted comments that was used that day. But the war between the states from 1861 to 1865 really kind of started the Memorial Day tradition, and it really began unofficially with the dedication of the National Cemetery in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, following the July 3-day titanic struggle, and as it turned out, the most significant battle showdown of the war. The war lingered on for 2 more years after Gettysburg, but for all intent and purposes, the South's best chance to successfully secede from the Union was lost on those farm fields in eastern Pennsylvania, just across the Maryland border, in 3 days of battle that have been described and depicted in books and movies, and just some of the most fascinating moments in American history, and all the heroes that living and dead that descended from that struggle. The ceremony, after the battle, there was a tremendous problem in Gettysburg. A small town of farmers without a whole big population were left with literally thousands of soldiers, dead or horribly wounded, that they had to deal with. And it took several months and tremendous dedication and effort, but by November of 1863, the cemetery at Gettysburg was ready to be opened up officially, and of course, they were going to have a huge commemorative ceremony. The guest speaker, the primary voice that they wanted to hear from, was a U.S. Senator by the name of Edward Everett. Now, he had also been a professor, and I think even president, maybe that was afterwards, of Harvard University. But this guy was considered the most brilliant scholar and the greatest orator in all the land. A guy who could give the kind of speeches that just moved people and depicted occasions. He was like the rock star speaker, and they had Edward Everett lined up to come to Gettysburg for the dedication of the cemetery. As an afterthought, in the very last days, actually just a couple of weeks before the ceremony in November, a messenger brought a communication to the White House inviting President Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln, to join them at the ceremony to open up the Gettysburg Cemetery officially and dedicate it and honor the fallen Union soldiers from the Gettysburg conflict. And in that invite, it said, and Mr. President, if you would like to make a couple of brief remarks of appropriate comments, that would be very welcome. Well, let's dissect that. Brief and appropriate. You didn't have newsreels, you didn't have broadcasts, you didn't have any kind of semblance of understanding the wit and humor of Abraham Lincoln, the tremendous ability to convey thoughts that we all know as part of his great legacy now. But most people in the country never heard the president's voice during their tenure. It's hard to imagine now where every 15 seconds we get a soundbite from President Trump, and we didn't get very many from President Biden, but that's because he really wasn't capable of conveying any thoughts or vocals. But I'll digress from that path. But basically, Lincoln had the reputation in a lot of these really, quote, civilized places like Philadelphia and Pennsylvania as being a hick. He was not college educated. He was self-educated. Of course, his family started off in Kentucky and eventually emigrated to Illinois, but he just didn't have a very good reputation. And although people that knew better, that had seen him during the presidential campaign, knew that he was a really top-notch speaker. Anyway, long and short of the story, Lincoln did travel on that day to Gettysburg by train, arriving in time for the ceremony, and was seated on the stage when Edward Everett took front and center and began his speech, which was timed. Of course, there were no stopwatches or any kind of official videotape, but the estimated time, according to people that were there, and I'm sure they were looking at their watches quite a bit, because these people were not seated. The luminaries on the stage were seated, but the crowd was standing in front of the reviewing stand. I got to visit Gettysburg 7 or 8 years ago, and was very honored to stand in the exact spot that this ceremony took place. Anyway, Everett started his speech, and he went on and on and on and on. After all, he was the greatest speech maker of his era. People estimate that speech took, or maybe it was not an estimate, maybe somebody was actually tracking it, and I'm sure they were because their feet had to be killing them, 2 hours and 14 minutes. Now, let's put it in modern terms. I don't think we've had many speakers, presenters stand up there for 2 hours and 14 minutes rambling on and on. So the amazing thing was the next speaker was President Abraham Lincoln. And Abraham Lincoln delivered in just over, somewhere in between 2 and 3 minutes, his short speech, which became known as the Gettysburg Address and is perhaps one of the greatest commemorative speeches ever, not only written, but delivered. A lot of people that were there were shocked at how well he commemorated the event and how well he summed it up in such a short time. And they were very appreciative of his remarks. And when I used that line in my broadcast with Terry, she said, well, of course they were appreciative. It only took 2 minutes. They were exhausted from standing there for 2.5 hours. So anyway, Lincoln went back and sat down. There was just a smattering of applause. Of course, once again, Terry had pointed out people were too tired to be excited or respond. And he sat down next to Edward Stanton, who was the cabinet member for Lincoln, the Secretary of War, and he told Stanton that speech didn't scour. That term, scour, is a plow term. It means when you plow a field and the blade doesn't get deep enough and it's not effective, and you basically have to do it again. If it doesn't scour, it was a waste of time. It was a wasted effort. Lincoln's appraisal of the crowd's reaction and his own remarks turned out to be historically way off base, because what he did was absolutely energize everyone when that speech got out. And we talk about, and I know we brought this up in that broadcast as well, we think we live in such divisive times, but there was great angst about Lincoln, even in the North. People still questioning him as late as 1863, because until the Gettysburg victory by the Union, the war had not gone well at all. He had already fired like 5 generals, including General George McClellan twice as the supreme commander of the Army of the Potomac, and was just going through a whole bunch of guys, including General Meade, who he had made general right before the Gettysburg campaign. And Meade and Robert E. Lee's invading Southern Army coming up through Maryland and into Pennsylvania basically ran into each other by accident. This was never intended to be the site of the Great Showdown, but it turned out to be just that. So General Meade was fired shortly after winning at Gettysburg by Lincoln. And the reason was, after Lee took the terrible defeat the last 2 days of the battle, including Pickett's charge at the deciding day at Gettysburg, where they tried to break the middle of the Union lines and were rebuffed with disastrous results. The South lost so many commanders, so many major figures. It was a disaster. And Lee's army kind of snuck out of town that night and started heading back south in a long, slow wagon train. And Lincoln was absolutely furious at General Meade for not finishing that tattered army off. They had lost about 40% of their soldiers. They were beaten and wounded and really just vulnerable to attack they were in the retreat mode. And basically Meade let Lee get back into Virginia and get out of harm's way. So Lincoln was already under fire, and he turns out to make one of the greatest speeches in the history of the United States. And on the broadcast that I right now cannot put my hands on, we have a depiction of that Gettysburg Address speech. And if you get a chance today, there's several versions of it on YouTube. Of course, we don't have Lincoln himself, but we've got some good recreations of what it might have sounded like. And the words are so monumental. 77 years ago, our nation was formed, and et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, that's where it started. And after that speech, after the Civil War, Terry, the war between the states, it became a tradition in so many towns around the eastern seaboard of our country predominantly, but even in some other spots, that in cemeteries where war veterans were interred, it became, on May the 30th of each year, it became a tradition to have what was called Decoration Day. And on Decoration Day, everybody in the town had a day off. They went into the cemeteries with flowers and flags and little tributes to their loved ones. But it was a big deal for all the townspeople to honor all the soldiers, even if they didn't have any next of kin connected to the situation. And Decoration Day became a big barbecue and a big festival to celebrate the greatness of America and the heroes that had preserved it in all of these moments of conflict. And it was pretty much spread as a tradition in all parts of the country, even though it started up north. But down in the South, where there still is a separate Veterans Day for Confederate soldiers, the tradition became very popular as well. It was not until, this is astounding to me, it was not until 1971. Now, a lot of you might be shocked to hear this, but it was 1971 when President Richard Nixon and Congress passed a bill to declare Monday, the final Monday of every May, as Memorial Day. So it was no longer on May 30th, which fell at, of course, various days of the week, depending on the calendar year. It was going to be the final Monday, and that was the beginning of using all of those weekends with those opportunities for Labor Day and Memorial Day to be what became known and we are now familiar with as Monday holidays. So Memorial Day did not become a sanctioned federal holiday until, once again, 1971, which is kind of amazing that for all those years, almost a little over 100 years, Decoration Day was the tradition. It had been started to become called Memorial Day earlier in the 20th century, but it officially became Memorial Day in 1971. So that's kind of the origins of this day. It is something that is so important to all Americans to honor the sacrifice of those who fell, giving, as I mentioned, and it was from the Gettysburg Address, the ultimate devotion to sacrifice their lives for the freedoms that we all so routinely enjoy. We went on to talk about other aspects of Memorial Day, had a great speech in that from Ronald Reagan, who talked about a young soldier who had fought in World War I. He worked in a barber shop in New York somewhere and was a really fast runner, and they had him during battle action running back and forth between various brigades and delivering messages and battle strategy. Tragically, somewhere in France, he was killed in a battle while trying to deliver an important message, and he had a diary in his pocket. And there's a passage that Reagan reads in that speech that talks about, and once again, this is available on YouTube as well. If you look up Reagan Memorial Day speech, it talks about this young soldier's writings. And he said, "I have come to accept the responsibility of the perception that I alone am responsible for us winning this war. We must win. And I feel personally electrified." I don't remember the word he used. I'm butchering the quote. But he basically said, "I am conducting myself as if it is all up to me." I mean, that kind of selflessness, that kind of sacrifice. I mean, every American right now, no matter what your politics are, no matter where your attention is, every single solitary American needs to take a step back, look up to the sky, get on your knees, go to your local cemetery, honor our veterans that fallen in all the different conflicts. Memorial Day, of course, a gigantic one to take a look at the conflicts, the history, all the things that make America what it is today. And it's time for us to resume that attitude and that cooperation with each other to at least take the time to appreciate what these brave soldiers, the men and women who've fallen in battle, have done for us to preserve our country. It's important to teach your children these traditions. Make them appreciate the greatest country in the world, whether you're unhappy with the political directions, whether you're in different camps, it doesn't matter. This coming Monday, a week from today, May 25th, let's all be Americans, and let's remember with great honor and dignity and appreciation those who gave the ultimate full measure of devotion. I'm Kip Keefer. I wish I could have produced the fantastic broadcast without Terry. This one didn't scour, but to steal Lincoln's phrase, but hopefully sometime I will recover that and be able to broadcast it again. I miss my partner. She is the best. And that show is one of the most memorable accomplishments in terms of a collaboration that I can ever recall. So God bless you all. God bless the fallen soldiers that defended with their very lives everything we so enjoy in the greatest country on God's green earth. Have a wonderful week, everybody, and a fantastic Memorial Day weekend. God bless you all. I'm Kip Keefer. God bless America.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.